Ow! Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Alright, everybody. I'm back with another book review. It's been a really long time, I know. And at this particular point, before I do anything else, I want to talk to you about my blog, which will have written versions of my book reviews, as well as links to audio versions of my book reviews. It will be www.theworldsofbrandonhill.com. TheWorldsofBrandonHill.com. So, today I want to talk to you about a book that I read a few days back, especially finishing up during the time I had surgery. For those of you who don't know, a couple of weeks back I had an acute attack of pancreatitis that was caused by an obstruction in my bile duct, which was caused by stones in my gallbladder. So I had my gallbladder removed. I had spent the last couple of weeks recovering from that, and today, finally, in the final phase of my recovery, they got the staples out. Yay! All that pain and frustration gone. So, anyway, back to the subject at hand. The book, Confusion of Princes. Now, interestingly enough, this is a book I had, when Garth Nix originally released it, I stumbled upon an advertisement for the book on the internet, and I read a little bit of the book. I think it was like a sample reading piece of the first chapter. So, it intrigued me. However, I was kind of busy with other books that I was reading at the time and doing a lot of writing, so I didn't read it until picking the book up recently and went on ahead and started to read it. So Garth Nix, for those of you who know, well, he's a fairly well-known author. He's best known for his Old Kingdom trilogy, the books of Sabriel, Lirael, and Aborson. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. If Mr. Nix ever sees this review, and if I did mispronounce them, I deeply apologize. I actually have those three books, and I need to get to reading them sooner or later. But I wanted to read this because I read the first chapter sample, and it kind of intrigued me. Here's the reason why. It's set in a really distant future. It's an indeterminately distant future. They never give any real hints to how far in the future it is. From the way it looks, probably thousands of years. And what it is there's a giant interstellar empire that survives through three types of tech: mech tech, sci tech, and bi-tech, which gives the empire a leg up in technology over its three main enemies, which use like particular types of tech, but the empire has a better other type of tech that is able to overcome their proficiency in the other two types of tech. So it's kind of an interesting state of affairs to be in. So the story is woven around a guy named Prince Khemri, who is one of millions of princes who rule the various systems that compose this vast, vast empire, especially if there are millions of them. And the story is basically a part coming-of-age story, another part everything you know is wrong kind of story. And it follows him upon the date of his ascension, where he is connected to the imperial mind, a process which grants princes near immortality. Near immortality because not only are princes equipped with enhancements and bionic implants that give him that are done using sci-tech, bi-tech, and mech-tech, but connecting to the imperial mind allows them to be downloaded into new bodies in case they die, provided the imperial mind, the system that rules the entire empire, deems them worthy. Khemri, just like all his other princes, all his other fellow princes, were taken from their parents, and their parents are either given the option of having their memories erased or being killed on the spot. And this is kind of something that he begins thinking about in the story, wondering, did his parents choose this or the other? Actually, an answer is given to that later on in the story, but I don't want to spoil everything for you, of course. So, anyway, princes are taken with their parents, they're altered with the implants and all these enhancements and such, and like I said, these technologies give the Empire an advantage over all their basic enemies. Now, when the time of his ascension comes, Khemri is expecting to live sort of a carefree life with his own private ship, but because of his master of assassins, who is assigned to him to protect him from the machinations of other princes who would seek to have him assassinated before ascending. And they never really explain, by the way, why these princes are always trying to kill each other. Uh, because as the story goes, an explanation is not really given for these plots. Well, there's one thing that could be the cause of it, but seeing how there are millions of princes, the chances of this prize don't really seem very realistic. But then again, that's just me. So he's thrust into this life filled with all these assassination attempts, and of course he soon realizes that his life is not his own, and he has to follow the rules of the Empire, join one of the imperial military branches, and have to survive even there. And then a final training, which has him downloaded into a non-enhanced body for a trip to the farthest reaches of the Empire, actually a system beyond the reaches of the Empire, to try to find his way back home. Becomes a bit of a turning point for the story, in that it introduces Khemri to the life of a commoner, and he has to learn to do, well, as the book says, the opposite of what a prince would do. And this leads to a lot of interesting things that he comes to contact with, which changes him in ways that prepare him for the final endgame, in the final few chapters of the story, which both come at you abruptly, but unfortunately is something that you kind of see coming from a mile away. For all the build-up, for all the interesting things that happens in this story, the final part of the story, unfortunately, is something of a letdown. I'll get to that in just a moment. Because going back, as the story progresses, you get a picture of just how vast this empire is. Just how advanced this technology is, how old it is, how far, well, a vague picture of how far it reaches. Garth Nix has done a pretty good job of world building. I've seen more thorough jobs, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he did a bad job. Like I said, it's a very good job of world building for such a short novel. It's only in the vicinity of 350 pages from what I've read. For such a relatively short novel, Nix really gives a good sense of scope as the story progresses. Especially, like I said, with all the technologies and how Khemri has to use a lot of these technologies, and also just how some of these technologies work, especially the bi-tech, which is really pretty interesting. He weaves all that together really well, the uses of the psi-tech and the uses of the mech-tech and the bi-tech, and how they're using various components. As a matter of fact, Garth Nix really likes to go into tech talk a bit. The closest writer I think that's reminiscent of is perhaps David Weber. However, Nix has nowhere near the fanatical levels of going into strategies and the ins and outs of the technologies and everything like that David Weber does. When I read his Safehold series, well, been reading it. So, thankfully, it doesn't drown you completely in all that. Nix seems to give a great deal of this information, and you can get a little lost in that, but he pulls you out of it fairly quickly. So, the story doesn't so much slog, because it does slow down a little bit in a few parts because of this, but otherwise, the story where things are happening at a fast pace really do happen at a fast pace. Pretty reminiscent of pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Pretty standard for a young adult novel. But like I said, the ending part of the book, like I said, Nix kind of drops the ball in that it just feels expected. You know how if you're watching a movie and you feel if you know the ending is coming, the type of ending is going to come from a mile away, it's a little bit disappointing if it's exactly how you expected it, or just not too different, but pretty much what you expected. I kind of got that feeling, of course, when watching M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. And with how the ending is, you expected, this to happen and this to happen, and it pretty much was exactly how you expected it to be, and that was, of course, a really big letdown, which made a lot of people not like the movie. Now, in the case of Confusion of Princes, Garth Nix does this a little bit. You hope that the ending of the book is, though you expect it to be a certain thing, you hope that he mixes it up, or it changes your expectations with something that happens. But he really doesn't with this. And maybe it's simply because this is a young adult novel where he's trying to follow a particular path. But I'm not sure. I think that because this story, after having read it, I know that it's professional writing, the professionalism of its writing bleeds out more than just the YA audience. I would think that Mr. Nix would have had a bit more of the unexpected at the end of the story. So it was a bit of a letdown, not only in what happens being so expected, but that the fast pace goes especially fast in those last few chapters and ends with something that is completely expected. However, this does not make the book a bad book. An ending can be a little bit of a letdown or a massive letdown. For me, I am a book as a whole person. And so I'm trying to judge this book not only in its ending, but everything. And really, it's still very, very much worth reading because of the universe that Nix builds around Prince Khemri and the technology, the civilization, the world building, all that. It softens the blow of the ending, which isn't a bad ending. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad ending. It's just one that, to me, feels, cookie cutter. And some people consider that to be a really bad thing. If you're looking for something that's going to be a fairly easy and brisk read, then I still recommend this particular book, because despite the swiftness and maybe expectedness of the things that occur in the ending, it still has a great story to tell. And so in the end, I think I can give A Confusion of Princes a 7 out of 10. I think that it would have had a higher score had the ending not been so expected and maybe so ordinary. But otherwise, the book itself is pretty extraordinary, and a book that I'm glad to have finally read, because I really was, the premise of the book really intrigued me. And in all honesty, he could make more stories in this universe. Even maybe things involving Prince Khemri, even though the ending did give plenty of closure. There could be more to tell. I'm hoping that that's the reason why he was so vague and only giving small things about this universe. But even if he doesn't, it still was a pretty darn good read for me. So, I think that's about all I have to say, everyone. If you want to get my full review, as I said, you can go to www.theworldsofbrandonhill.com. I will be posting written reviews of various books that I've been reading. Also, I plan very soon on starting to do um, reading for reviews that I will post on Amazon. I know a lot of authors, including myself, have been looking for people to do reviews. For instance, websites where I found a huge list of people who do reviews have websites where they do various book reviews. And I've been wanting to do that myself because I want to add to those voices for people who really love books and who want to get their stories, want to get stories done with notoriety. I want to start small, but I want it also to expand. But I'll get to that as soon as I can. I will keep you all posted with more news in regards to this. So until then, everyone, as I always say, comment, rate, subscribe. Please keep it civil. Trolls will not be tolerated. And once again, everyone, thank you for listening. And as always, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.